We have low humidity as well, challenging terrain. All of this is creating a problem. And when we look at some of these images out of Lahaina, on the left and right side of your screen, check out how strong those winds are and the flames which are in a town. It's the worst case scenario, too, when we consider what's been going on. These strong winds have been due in large part to two sort of pressure systems battling one another. We have Hurricane Dora, a strong Category 4 hurricane well to the south, and then an unusually strong ridge of high pressure, which oftentimes brings some trade winds, these summer trade winds in Hawaii. Lahaina is on the island of Maui, on the western side. And Jane Manar, Craig Herrera are here. We've been talking about this all morning long. These images that we're getting in, it's devastating, especially when you consider these natural disasters. Aniki was a historic storm. It came in from the south, right, and it was devastating. But these fires, they're still burning this morning. They're still cloaked in darkness, I should mention, in Hawaii, but the fires are still raging on.
And I think that this forecast is not going to let up, at least over the next couple of days. Yeah. How strong Dora has been, Cat 4, and it's been kind of teetering, between hurricane and major hurricane strength. But regardless of that, as it continues to track, by the way, at least 500 or more miles south of Hawaii, just because of how strong this storm is. I mean, look at that eye that continues to push forth here. Category 4 moving off to the west at 23 miles per hour. I think as Dora continues to kind of pulse, in the Pacific there, it has to kind of set up these waves, especially with those winds up into the upper levels. And that pressure gradient, I think of it, kind of interacting with that high. It certainly is kind of pulsing up these winds over the mountains.
It's a scenario that we saw play out. I mean, it's a surprise even to see that we're still talking about Dora being a Category 4 hurricane. Yeah. It's got its own wind field, which is pretty compact. I mean, away from the eye.
It's a small storm.
It is a small storm, but you get these pressure gradient winds, and these winds can be prolific. It's what we see for the Santa Anas, but specifically in Hawaii, Craig, it's devastating because Lahaina is a historic town. It formerly was the capital of the Kingdom of Hawaii. And now a lot of these historic buildings, perhaps some reports that they have been burning.
It is so scary. You think about a town of at least 13,000 people. Elevation, by the way, I was looking, it's 3 feet above sea level. It's the base at the bottom of the island there, but on the other side, you've got some higher elevation, some higher terrain. Look at the terrain there. You can see where the radar is in the beam. It's making its scope, right, to figure out where the rain is falling. This isn't rain. Take a look at that bright yellow. That is picking up the smoke from the wildfires, and you see this often anytime you're talking about a wildfire that big. It is picked up by the radar, and you can also see the direction the smoke would be blowing from west to east based on some of these winds. You talked about that gradient and the high pressure to the north, the winds from the south there. You're basically getting a funneling effect. You've got clockwise rotation to the north, counterclockwise to the south, and the Hawaiian Islands are kind of right in the middle there. While they're not super close, that high and that low, that's sort of the what's Dora down to the south, it's enough, plus the trade winds, to give you some of these stronger winds. You also think about the winds coming from west to east, and as they go down the hill, they compress. I often think about if you've ever pumped a bicycle tire and you pump it up and all that air is getting compressed inside of the tube, you touch the tube and it's really hot. That's because of all the compression that's going on. It's drying the humidity out as well.
It's shortly after 4 o'clock in the morning there in Hawaii, and there have been shelters that were open. Before the sun set there last night, that's when we began to see some of these images emerge of the fire. And it's concerning to think once the sun rises later this morning in Hawaii, what will be happening. If radar is picking up, which we were just looking at, if radar is picking up the fires, you can imagine just what's happening right now on the ground in some of these images.
When you look at video like this and you're like, okay, the smoke is super dark, what is going on there? Oftentimes when you see a wildfire or any type of fire and you see dark smoke within that, that's a lot of man-made material that's burning up. So that's obviously homes, that's tires, that's all the bad, everything that's man-made that's blowing up and burning up, and that's also going to cause air quality issues as well. So they're dealing with that darker smoke that's also going to be having an effect on the people's health, but also just you think about how much the fire is growing. When you think about the winds too, I also just display this. So if you've got a wildfire flame up in the air, say 10 feet. The winds are going so strong that basically lays the fans down, but then you cover twice as much area there. So what was going up 10 feet in the air is now going probably 30 to 40, depending on how fast those flames are going. So now the flames are basically flat on the ground, and that's just eating everything ahead of it.
And we saw that in Lahaina. I mean, there was some video there of the buildings being burned, but you can see how those flames were just jumping to the next building because those winds were taking that fire so quickly across the street.
And I was trying to circle, and I'm glad Matthew Blew over and Weather Command did, looking at even some of that smoke, which is trained farther to the west. I mean, right over Lanai City. We have Lahaina, which is on the western coast of Maui, and then Lanai City. And again, the radar site is out of Molokai, the island just to the north of Maui. The Hawaii National Guard, they've been activated. They're providing support to firefighters. The winds, though, are going to remain quite strong.
But quickly, you talk about how hard it is going to be for them to fight these fires. You talk about the challenging terrain. You know, oftentimes, too, you can get these wildfires that can spread even faster up the terrain. And so if that's beginning to happen, of course, down to the lower elevations along the coastlines, we know that's burning. And as these fires continue to spread up, it is going to be that much harder to get control.
And no fire attack, or from above, air attack, because the winds are too strong. They can't fly above it in some cases.
I think high wind warnings have been dropped, but wind advisory is still in effect. But the damage has already started.
I'm Amy Freeze. Welcome to Fox Weather's YouTube page. We have more great videos on the way, so make sure to subscribe to stay updated on all things weather.